Charter Local Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. We are joined today by Matthew Bokach and Adrienne Dunfee. Matthew is the Monument Manager at the San Gabriel Mountains National Monument. Adrienne is the Deputy Monument Manager, and I am so glad they're here today. I've spoken several times with U.S. Congresswoman Judy Chu, who has been so excited by the designation of the San Gabriel Mountains as a national monument. Let's talk about what most broadly is the San Gabriel Mountains National Monument. Matthew.
Sure. So the San Gabriel Mountains National Monument was designated by President Obama in 2014, just about 2 years ago. And basically it's highlighting a number of what are called objects of interest within this part of the Angeles National Forest. So the monument boundary is about half of the national forest. It's 345,000 acres roughly. And a number of the objects of interest that were identified.
Let's talk about those in a moment. I will get there. But first I want to ask you, Adrienne, why was it important to obtain this designation? Those that fought for it, what was their interest?
Sure. I think there's been a concern just from baseline Forest Service staffing across the nation. There was a concern, there was a lack of funding, and just with the significant use experienced on the Angeles National Forest, our local representatives were looking for a way to bring some increased funding and increased recognition for us to be able to start tackling some of those issues.
Yeah, there's no doubt that prior to the designation, I mean, we've seen imagery where there was just a lot of neglect, a lot of trash, and the designation arguably should help to bring attention, funding, new partnerships. We'll talk about that in a moment. So it's an exciting time. It's been a year or two since the designation. And let's go back to those objects of interest, which are interesting to me because it kind of sets a framework as to why we're moving forward. One of the objects of interest, there are hundreds, but kind of broadly, is the scientific object of interest. Tell us what that is.
Sure. So within that category, the two most important ones that were both named within the proclamation are Mount Wilson, which is a really important, astrological site, and then astronomical, and then
I heard you.
The San Dimas Experimental Forest, which is within the system of experimental forests nationwide. This one has really had a lot of research done on watershed function in hills that are covered in chaparral.
I want to ask you, Adrienne, about the relevance to heritage, both deep historical and more recent.
Sure. That was certainly one of the other categories of objects of interest that the proclamation is intended to protect. We have hundreds of Native American sites, sites that are important in the history of mining in the local area. So a wide variety of sites that we have certain laws that we already have to follow in protecting these sites, but just increased ability to preserve and protect those.
What about
and interpret.
Yeah, indeed. What about, Matthew, the biodiversity of the mountains? What makes this area unique and worthy of protection?
So it's really interesting to think that these mountains are above one of the largest metropolitan areas in the country, and yet they do have one of the largest documented numbers of species. And it's really because they're so steep, and so you have a lot of different types of habitat in a very small area. It's one of the biodiversity hotspots for plants in the country and in the state.
Really?
Yep.
So it's not just life that breathes.
Nope.
It's plant life as well.
Yep. Plants. The most number of species of birds that have ever been surveyed in an area this size within the continental United States. And again, it's just that diversity of habitats you get going from sea level up to 10,000 feet. And then back to about 4,000 feet on the north side.
Speaking of water, Adrienne, I want to ask you about the watershed. Matthew kind of hinted at it, but what is, in terms of the object of interest for the monument, what's the relevance of the San Gabriel's in terms of the region's watershed?
Sure. Well, it's very important that the watersheds in the San Gabriel Mountains are protected, as it's approximately 20 to 25% of the basin's water supply that comes from the San Gabriel Mountains.
That's huge.
That is.
I mean, that's a very significant amount. And here we are in drought. So I got you. I got you. Aside from those broad object areas of interest, I want to talk about environmental justice. It's a term that's become very, I guess, popular over the last decade or so. Explain the environmental justice element of this and how creating the monument improves elements of justice when we think of the environment.
Okay. So one of our big pushes right now on the forest and with the monument is to better connect the people who live in LA, all the diverse communities. And we already have one of the most diverse user bases of any national forest in the country, but we're really working on, for example, better outreach to people who maybe don't own a car, have been looking at these mountains their entire lives but have never been there. So setting up systems of transportation where they can actually get up to the mountains and go for a hike.
Yeah, let's talk more about that. Let's talk about access, because I have looked at these mountains. I don't really know how I can get to them if I wanted to. I know that you're thinking about a transit to trails program. That's on your mind as part of the plan that's circulating now. But Adrienne, talk to us about the access element and how the monument status could assist.
Sure. We have a number of state and county roads that do provide access to our monument. But with those roads comes a traffic problem, parking problem.
Yes.
So people that want to come visit on holiday or weekends during the summer are often circling around for hours trying to find a parking space.
Right.
So one of the programs that we're hoping to implement is finding partners to help implement shuttle services to provide access to those that may not have a car, but also to help alleviate some of the congestion.
And let's talk about partnerships, because that really is pivotal. While the designation as a national monument is helpful, the funding aspect of it is always in question. Any year, Congress can up for or against funding. And so while funding isn't everything, surely it plays a part. But if you can create partnerships with in-kind contributions or financial contributions, I'm sure it can act as leverage. Explain.
Yeah, so we're seeking those kinds of opportunities. One other thing that has emerged with the monument designation is this community collaborative group, which the National Forest Foundation actually facilitated putting together. The community collaborative represents 45 different types of stakeholder, and it's the entire range from elected officials are on the collaborative to user groups, environmental groups, pretty much the full range of people who are interested in the monument. They've been really instrumental in giving us feedback on the plan, and they have indicated that once we get through this planning period, their primary interest is going to be being those partners, but also helping us find new partners to implement all of the projects that we want to see happen within the monument.
Adrienne, I have a feeling that folks that are watching have become inspired. I'm inspired.
I hope so.
So my question for you is, how can we get involved, either as individuals or maybe as part of an organization that can become the partner that Matthew speaks of? I'm sure you're taking applications literally and metaphorically.
That is true, certainly. We have a number of offices around. Our headquarters is in our supervisor's office in Arcadia. Matthew and I work out of our ranger station in Glendora.
You're so lucky. You're like a park ranger. You grew up and became a park ranger.
So people are welcome to come in and talk to us, visit our website. We have positions that are dedicated to help facilitate some of these partnerships and volunteers. We are
countless.
Yes, countless. We could not
Hundreds.
do a fraction of the work that gets done out there without our volunteers.
I just have to say, simply congratulations.
Thank you.
What a wonderful opportunity for the both of you as new members of this National Monument team, and how wonderful for Southern California. Their names are Matthew Bokach and Adrienne Dunfee. They are monument managers for the San Gabriel Mountains National Monument. I'm Brett Pomerance, Charter Local Edition.